Welcome to another God and Country class. This is our 8-week series. This is week 2. And of course, our strategy here is we are learning about America's godly heritage, good economics, and the proper role of government, those 3 things. And our motto is snacks, friends, and saving our country. So we've got snacks, we've got our friends. Now let's get to saving our country. Last week we did a little bit of introduction into economics. Now we're going to get into it a little bit further. Now all these topics that we're talking about, I'm really trying to break them down into its most simplistic form. Not that we are simple people, but that I'm not attempting to make PhD students, but rather just good educated citizens. So if you look up any of these principles, you'll likely find much more complicated definitions, and you can indulge yourself all you want in those definitions, but we're simply going to speak about these things in a colloquial fashion. We're going to talk about things such as the invisible hand, laissez-faire. We're even going to start speaking French. We're going to speak about capitalism, socialism, communism, Marxism, private property rights, incentives, profits, competition, the price system, value, sound money, Federal Reserve, inflation, boom and bust cycles, saving versus spending, banking, government intervention, unintended consequences, price controls, welfare, specialization, government regulation, short-term versus long-term, all groups versus some groups, first, second, and third order consumers, and tax policy. Now obviously we're not going to get to all this tonight. We're going to cover one portion of it tonight and then continue next week. And obviously this is just an overview. There's always more to learn, and I encourage further learning on all these topics. Does anyone remember the pencil story that we told last week? Mm-hmm. The idea of the pencil was that it's such a common utensil, just a little piece of wood, and yet what we proposed last week was that no one in this room, in fact no one in the world, could make a pencil. And we started off, and you may have been rather skeptical of that, but by the end of it you realized how many elements, how many millions of people all went into making just a simple pencil, a thing that we can completely forget about in our day-to-day lives, and yet just the fact that it exists is a near miracle, actually, that it exists. And it gives us appreciation of everything we see around us that was made, that it took millions of people that don't know each other, that don't live in the same country, don't even speak the same language oftentimes, to make everything we see. One of the wonderful things about the pencil was that there was no director directing them all. You over there get up in the morning. You go to that factory. You go over here and make this. And yet all over the world people were getting up in the morning, drinking their tea, drinking their coffee. They're going off to work and they're producing something. They were making something. They were serving someone in some fashion. And it all somehow came together in the form of a pencil, the form of a television, the form of clothing. Everything we see that was not made by God was made by man. And somehow, without a grand director, without a dictator directing it all, it still came into being. That process of everyone getting up in the morning and going to work and serving themselves by getting a paycheck and having to create something in order to get that paycheck, we call that process the invisible hand. It's the invisible hand that directs everyone in the morning to get up and go to work. The invisible hand is basically a description of the market forces that occur automatically without government or other central authority guiding the activity. It's happening all by itself. Laissez-faire. This is a French term which means leave alone or let it be. If the free market had a motto, it would be laissez-faire. It means leave it alone. If it doesn't need a central dictator or some grand authority guiding all the activities, it's got the invisible hand guiding it, well, just leave it alone. Let it be. Let the invisible hand work. The invisible hand, laissez-faire, is people acting without government interference except for the protection of private property rights. Capitalism. If you watch the news a lot, if you listen to a lot of politicians talking, if you remember the Occupy Wall Street movement a number of years ago, you saw a lot of young people protesting in the streets, and a lot of them had signs telling you that capitalism was evil. They said capitalism is horrible, down with capitalism. Even today, I believe, you had thousands and thousands of people in New York City on Wall Street protesting the big corporations polluting the environment, allegedly. These were all green activists, and a lot of them probably also hated capitalism, even though they were there to protest the environment being ruined, allegedly, by global warming. A lot of them probably actually did not like capitalism, which is why they chose Wall Street to be their venue of protest. So what is this capitalism that we hear is so evil? It's very, very simple. It's an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the government. It's just private ownership. That's what it is. It's instead of the government owning things and running this system, it's individuals. It's small business owners, it's corporations, but it's a private enterprise engaging in business for profit. That's it. Now, socialism, this is an economic and political system with a mix of private and government ownership. Now remember, these are very simplistic definitions, but essentially think of socialism as a mix form, and this is a transition stage between capitalism and communism in Marxist ideology. Communism, this is an economic and political system with no private property. Now, does this mean that no one owns a hat or a shoe? No, not necessarily. But what it means is that the means of production and the means of buying and selling, etc., are directed by the government. The government runs and owns everything, essentially. Now, this is a simplistic definition, but when you're thinking about those three forms of government, when you think about capitalism, think private ownership. When you think about socialism, think a mix. And when you think about communism, think no private property. The government owns and runs everything. And these are very simplistic forms. This, communism, is the final stage of Marxist ideology after capitalism and socialism. Now, who's the father of these two ideologies, socialism and communism? Well, it's a guy by the name of Karl Marx. He wrote in the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital about these ideas. He is essentially the ideological source of socialism and capitalism. Socialism and communism. If you want to boil Marxism down to a few basic ideas, it starts off with class warfare. Karl Marx saw things divided into not necessarily just the rich and the poor, but the workers and the owners. He really couldn't understand how profits were created. He thought they were some sort of magical evil entity. And he thought that the owners would somehow exploit the workers and take advantage of them, and that's how he somehow squeezed those profits out of them. You see, so in the Marxist ideology, the owners, or who he thought maybe were the rich people, those people up there, well, the owners were the ones exploiting the workers. Because he couldn't quite figure out how profit was made, he thought, well, if an owner is bad, then the private property that he owns must be bad, so let's get rid of that. If we get rid of private property, well, then the owners can no longer take advantage of the workers. He also couldn't figure out how profits were made. He thought they were this evil, magical thing that happened by the exploitation of workers, so he said, let's just get rid of profits too. If you don't own property, you can't exploit someone in the working process, and also if you can't make a profit, well, then you also can't exploit a worker. So he thought by getting rid of some of these ideas here, some of these aspects of a market, he thought he could cure the evils of society. Marx thought that capitalism alienates workers and creates an inhumane society. He viewed capitalism as inherently evil and bad, and he thought it would be destroyed under its own weight. He thought then capitalism would give way to socialism, and finally, after that transition stage, we would have communism, and finally, utopia. Utopia was Marx's idea of heaven on earth. He just thought somehow we were just going to be floating around magically, operating in this communistic system. He thought that people would just work hard, not for a profit, but for the good of the collective. And of course, this doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because private property rights are quite possibly the most important aspect of a free market system, of a functioning, prospering society. Private property rights essentially are the ability of an individual to buy, sell, and rent, maintain, cultivate, and make other free choices regarding their property. The individual receives the benefits of the ownership of that property. They bear the risk and the reward that comes with ownership. Think of the road and think of your lawn. You may take great care of your lawn. You may ride your mower, you may push your mower, and you take great care to stay within those lines. If there's some trash in your yard, you pick it up. If someone's left a toy or some other obtuse thing in your yard, you get a little bit upset. Why didn't they pick it up? And you put it away and you clean your yard. You take care of your property. Now, driving into your property, you may have passed a McDonald's bag on the side of the road. You may have passed some roadkill. You may have passed all sorts of things that you did not stop and pick up. Why? Well, it's not because you like things to be dirty. It's because it's not your property. It's the same thing with a rental car versus your own vehicle. You don't go and you rent a vehicle and, hang a nice little, Christmas tree there and to make it smell good. You don't detail it. You don't run it through the car wash. You don't polish the wheels and the tires and everything. You drive it, you take it back, and you forget about it because it's not yours. You have no reason to take care of it. Now, your own car, you're going to change the oil on time. You're going to do that 30,000 mile maintenance. You're going to rotate the tires. You're going to do that armor all on the inside. You're going to take care of your vehicle. Why? Because if you take care of it, it lasts longer. And that if you don't take care of it, you won't reap the benefits of it for very long. You may also want to sell that vehicle and make some money back one day. If you take care of it, you get more money. And if you don't, you get less. This is private property. Private property causes you to take care of the things that you have. In a society where you don't own anything, you have no incentive to take care of it because you're not going to reap the rewards of selling it down the road or using it for long term. You don't have those free decisions to make. So private property, not only does it prevent others from taking what you have without your permission, but it also is the reason that people take care of things and invest in things in society. An incentive is also another important aspect of the free market system. An incentive is a reason to do something. If a person can gain a reward from selling their property, that is an incentive to maintain it and invest in it. In the classroom recently, I asked the students what would happen if I told you no matter how well you do on the quiz, I'm going to give you all an A. I said, how hard are you going to study on that quiz? You're not going to study very hard at all. You're going to go and you're going to study for the quiz where your performance actually matters. And that's the same thing it is in society. If you have no possibility of failure in something or the possibility of a reward in something based on your performance, you're not going to put any effort into it. And that's the same way it is in economics. A profit is another thing that Karl Marx hated, that the Occupy Wall Street protesters thought was evil. It's oftentimes what politicians will rail against, those profits that those evil corporations are making. Well, what is a profit? It's quite simply the money left over after you have calculated your expenses. For instance, if you're a shoe salesman, you paid $20 for some shoes. You paid someone $10 to work at this shop and sell them. You sell the shoes for $40, you made $10 profit. We all understand this principle. Now, if the owner of this shoe store paid $20 for the shoes, paid someone $10 to sell the shoes, but somehow they only made $20 off of it, they could only sell it for $20, well, they lost money. Now, if you lose money on a deal, are you going to do that deal very often? No, because you didn't have a what to continue it? A profit, which is your reward. It is your incentive to continue engaging in that activity. So the profit is not some sort of evil, magical thing that erupts from somehow treating your workers poorly. The profit is the incentive to do something. If you don't make a profit, you're not going to continue that activity for very long. So the profit mechanism, that profit incentive, is the way we have everything we see in this room. In other words, someone had a profit to make by creating and selling this television. Someone had a profit to make by selling and giving me this chair here. Everything that we have was given to us because of a profit. The idea of an incentive to make more money than you put into it. Without profits, we would not have any of these things in this room because no one would have had a reason to make them in the first place. So profits aren't evil. They are, in fact, the way that we have everything we see. Without a profit, you won't offer that product for long. Profits cause goods and services to be offered in society. Without profits, production stops. Competition. This is oftentimes another thing that the politicians rail against. They say you shouldn't be competing against that other person. We need to make things fair. Well, what's competition? It's quite simply businesses and individuals attempting to provide better service and goods than others providing the same goods or services. This is like McDonald's versus Burger King. This is like Nike versus Converse. BP versus Texaco. iPhone versus Android. Whatever it is, someone has to offer you something that you want more than what you have to get your money from them. And they also have to offer you something you want more than the competitor. So McDonald's got to offer you a better burger than Burger King to get you to walk in their doors rather than Burger King doors. Nike has to offer you a better shoe than Converse, so on and so forth. Competition causes at least two things to happen. Competition causes quality to increase and prices to decrease. Excuse me. Competition also causes innovation and invention. People are finding better ways to do things because they want to get your money. For instance, if McDonald's and Burger King both have the best burgers they can make, what are they going to do next to get your money?
Offer you a toy.
A toy. Another incentive. Or what else are they going to do?
Have better French fries.
Better French fries, so they're offering little additives, that's right. Now what if they've offered as many things as they can think of, now what are they going to do?
Drop the price.
Drop the price, exactly. So quality, what you get, will increase with the process, and eventually prices will drop also. So competition actually gives us better things for a lower cost. Now let's just say that we've made the best burger we can. What are we going to do to it? We're going to throw bacon on it. Then what are we going to do? Well, the other guys got bacon too. Let's throw a boiled egg on it or a fried egg on it. Alright, now what are we going to do? Let's throw relish on there. And so people continue adding things. They keep on innovating different ways to do things to get you to buy their product. Now Apple, Steve Jobs, a number of years ago, he decided he's not going to simply make one product better. He's going to invent a completely new product. Before Apple, we didn't know that an iPhone existed. When he said, hey, you can put thousands and thousands of songs on a little device about the size of a playing card, deck of playing cards, we were blown away. We said we never knew that was possible. We thought we had to carry around our CD cases with hundreds and hundreds of CDs in it. We thought that's how you got around with your music. We didn't know that you could just walk off with a little thing about this big and you could have music for weeks. And yet he invented it, and now we all have to have one. You don't have to have one, but quite often we want one.
Every teenager's got one.
There you go. And then he creates an iPad, and now everyone goes out and buys one of those. We've got an iPhone. So in order to get your money, sometimes people simply have to create a new product that does something we never even dreamed could occur. So competition, the idea that they have to offer you something you want more than the money in your pocket, competition causes quality to increase and prices to fall. Innovation, invention. Competition actually brings high quality goods to low prices and low prices to everyone. It's funny because Marxism and these other ideologies, they claim they're doing things for the who? The poor. Or the underprivileged, those workers, etc. They claim they're tamping down those rich fat cats and they're doing it for the little guy. But in fact, in those societies, you have to be well connected to get the things. And if you're an average person in communistic societies, you don't have very much. But where can we go now and find decent quality items at rather low prices? I'd say Walmart. Or if you want an even better example of competition in the free market system, Sam's Club, Costco, where you can buy a tub of peanut butter this big for about $5. You don't know when you'll eat all that peanut butter, but you've got it, and it was a great deal. So Costco and Sam's Club and Walmart, these are beacons of the free market system. They bring the things that we all enjoy down to the lowest level of person. And quite frankly, the saying goes, if Walmart doesn't have it, you probably don't need it. So the point is that competition in a free market society where people can make a profit actually benefits the least among us. It actually brings the things that in some places only the rich have to your common average person. So the free market system, which is oftentimes demonized, capitalism, profits, these types of things, actually accomplish the goal that people on the other side say they want to accomplish. And yet they achieve the opposite effect, and capitalism and the free market system actually does what they say they want to do, which is benefits the poor and everybody. The price system. Many factors influence the price of a good or a service, including the cost of materials, labor, regulations, etc. Supply and demand. This is essentially the function which creates the price on that sticker. Now, there are many complicated ways to explain supply and demand, but I'm simply going to say it is the popularity of an item that determines its price. For instance, think of the clearance rack at Macy's. When it first gets to the store, when it's fresh out of the, fresh off the press, so to speak, when it's that new item at the beginning of the season, it's a high price, isn't it? No matter what it is, if it's that new style, it's going to start off very expensively. Lots of people are going to rush out and buy that new thing. And then, okay, they've got a little bit left. Well, let's lower the price a little bit, 10% off. All right, we'll sell a little bit more. People have got kind of their fill of it at that price. Well, let's lower it a little bit more, 25% off. We're trying to get this stuff out of the store. And as time goes on and this thing becomes less and less popular, where does it go?
Clearance rack.
Clearance rack, or to TJ Maxx where I buy it. Essentially, the popularity of an item determines its price. Or essentially, it's whatever the market will bear. Whatever people will pay for it at that time is what the price is. The price system, let me further explain this by discussing a topic that a lot of people actually might be surprised at, but it's the topic of price gouging. We may have heard of this term around the times of Hurricane Katrina and various crises. You see here, this is a line of people with their gas cans all standing in line waiting to get gas. You've got here someone making a joke about it, saying regular unleaded is an arm, plus is a leg, and premium is your firstborn. And here you've got a sign saying, notice, no price gouging allowed. And this is something that the politicians, they love to pander to people about, because they know people get pretty emotional about it. They think, we just had a crisis. I need my gas. How dare you sell water at a more expensive price? I need a generator. How dare you sell a generator for a higher price during a crisis? So politicians, they actually say, we're going to outlaw price gouging. We care about you. We want everyone to be able to get that generator or get that gas, get that water during a time of crisis. How dare those evil corporations turn a profit during a time of crisis? So what happens? The politicians, they pander, people vote them in, or they continue to vote for them, continue to support them, and they actually pass laws which say if you sell something for a significant price more than it was the day before a disaster, then that's price gouging. That's illegal. But what happens? Let's think about this just a little bit further. The day before a hurricane hits, you can walk through Lowe's and you can see dozens and dozens of generators all sitting there. And let's just say a generator is $800 the day before a crisis. You walk by and you say, I don't think I'll need a generator. What do I need a generator for? The next day, a crisis hits and you say, my power's out. I need hot water. The baby's crying. I need to take a shower. We need to keep the food in the refrigerator cold. I need a generator. So you go there, and guess what? All the generators may be gone. Why? Because the price was the same it was the day before. Now let's change the scenario. Let's just say that The crisis hits, people start running in buying generators. Now let's just say that someone, maybe they've got $2,000. They say, I think I'm going to buy 2. I don't really need a generator, but maybe I'll need a second one. So they get 2 generators. Maybe someone gets really, really freaked out, they buy 3. But now what happens, they raise the price a little bit, and someone says, I'll pay that for 1, but I don't think I'll pay that for 2. So those generators stay on the shelf. And guess what? Now someone else walks in, they say, well, that's a bit steep, but I need that generator. Alright? Now let's just say all the generators are gone. They've been sold at that price. You've got a sort of a disaster zone in that area. And Lowe's says, we need more generators. And they call the Lowe's in the next state over, and they say, send us all your generators. People are clamoring for generators. And the guy over at Lowe's says, we're not sending our trucks into that mess over there. They're going to get looted, or maybe some more bad weather will hit, whatever. And they say, well, we might do it if you paid us a little bit more. We're not going to send our truckers into that mess, etc., etc. So for the regular price, they're not going to do it. They need an extra incentive to make that trip, especially in an expedient manner. You want it tomorrow, you're going to have to pay our drivers more. You're going to have to pay us more for that extra trip through the middle of the night, into that risky area, etc. So you raise the price of a generator, it gives the truck driver and the truck owner, etc., an incentive to make that trip through the night into that risky disaster zone. You raise the price, they have an incentive, they drive it in there. Next thing you know, the next morning, you've got all the generators you want. Because you could raise the price, and that gave the people outside of that area a reason to bring it in there. And if you keep the price artificially low, if you don't laissez-faire, if you don't leave it alone and let people determine their own prices according to the popularity of an item, well then all of a sudden that becomes a scarce item. And the very thing that the politicians wanted to protect you from, they caused. Because they started meddling in the market. So the price system is simply another mechanism that should be left alone, left to the individual buyer and seller of that item, of that service, to be determined amongst themselves, according to what the market will bear at the time. Value. We're going to end on value tonight. How do you determine what something is worth? There are many theories that have been espoused throughout history. Some said, well, it's an addition of the materials and the work put into it and the hours of this and this and that. And yes, those things will give you an idea of the cost of an item, but not necessarily its value. For instance, if someone puts hours and hours and hours of research and development and bought the most expensive, high-tech space-age materials into creating the best, most lightweight bowling ball you could ever dream of, is anyone going to buy that bowling ball? The featherweight space-age bowling ball? Well, no, because that's ridiculous. You need weight, you need girth to throw that thing down the lane and knock those pins down. So even if they spent millions and millions of dollars and hundreds of hours developing this featherweight bowling ball, no one's going to buy it. So obviously value can't be determined by how much you put into it. Your costs can be determined by that, but not the value. A thing is worth ultimately whatever someone is willing to pay for it. And I offer for your consideration a diamond versus water. Now, Kara, let me ask you. One day, when you're old enough and your father approves of the young man, when he gets down on one knee, and it's going to take a whole lot, and he pulls something out of his pocket, and he says, Kara, would you marry me? Do you want him to be offering you a diamond or a bottle of water?
A diamond.
A diamond for sure. And that's what Dad wants too.
That'd be a big rock.
That's right. Now, let's just say that you are on your way to an exotic safari in Africa. And this is your honeymoon. You've gotten married. You've got your gigantic rock on your finger that you've showed all your friends, and they're all envious of this huge diamond that he's given you. Oh, Robert, he's so wonderful. Look at this diamond he gave me. I don't know what his name will be.
That's not Robert.
So you're in the plane. and you're flying across Africa for this exotic safari that you're going to go on. It's your dream come true. You love your ring. You love your husband. And you're flying, and all of a sudden you hear, there's trouble, there's trouble. The oxygen masks fall down. Someone comes over the loudspeaker and says, please get into the emergency positions. And everyone ducks down like that. Next thing you know, half the wing's gone. Next thing you know, people are flying out the windows and getting sucked through holes in the fuselage. And you're going down, And where do you land? You land in the desert. Now maybe in Africa they don't have these camels there, but you land in the desert. And no one knows where you are. They can't find the black box. They can't find the GPS. Robert's over there and he's no good anymore. And he broke his leg and he's knocked out. And there you are in the middle of the desert on your honeymoon. You can't stand it. How did this happen? But at least you've got your wedding ring. You got that big old diamond. So you go for days. No one comes to pick you up. You're so sad. Your skin is starting to become leathery. Your lips are just parched. You're starting to breathe in the sand and the dust and the dirt. You've been crawling up the sand dunes. You're so tired. You're so thirsty. You're so hungry. You just can't think you can go on. And all of a sudden, you see someone traveling. And they're a local indigenous person. And what do they have? A bottle of water. And you see it. And you say, please, give me the water. And he looks to you, kind of looks you over, and he goes, and you say, what? And he's pointing to your wedding ring. He's pointing to that diamond. And you say, no, not my diamond, not what Robert gave me, no. And he says, no water. And you say, but not my diamond. But you think, and you're so thirsty, you haven't had a drink for days, you're parched, your skin is just red and cracking by this point. All you want is a drink of water, and you say, fine, take it. And he hands you the water, and you drink it, and it's the best water you've ever tasted in your life. Now at that moment, what did you value more? The diamond or that bottle of water? That's right, the bottle of water. So essentially, how is value determined? Value is determined by whatever you will pay for something. Not determined necessarily by its price 2 years ago or what you cared about it 2 years ago. It's not determined by how much work it went into put into creating it. It's determined by how much someone is willing to pay for it. Now let me leave you on this devotional note. But if you ever look in the mirror and you start to question what you're worth, you wonder, how could I be worth anything? I don't have a great job, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. Well, just think about that diamond, just think about water. How much is someone going to pay for something? How much are they going to value something? Well, you're worth whatever someone is willing to pay for you. Now, what did someone pay for you?
Their life.
That's right. God the Father sent God the Son down in human form. He gave His only begotten Son so He could have a relationship with you. Now, I can't think of any other entity in the world, any other thing, any other person, any other place that is worth more than God. He created the heavens and the earth, the suns, the stars, and the moons. Everything you see on this earth, He created. Most powerful being that ever was, the infinite, the eternal, the all-knowing, the all-loving. He gave His life for you. So if you ever wonder what you're worth the price of the life of God. The Son of God, Jesus Christ, gave His life for you. And that is what you are worth. And that's what you're valued at.